All right, back to Lakehouse on a Lakehouse 2.0. Now, we finished off with the concept of Delta Parquet. Out of all the explanations I have read and whatnot, if you don't listen to this, go read out the article that the man put out. But to get started, why don't you explain to us what is Delta Parquet? What is it?
Yeah, so thanks for asking this. First of all, Delta Parquet is how Microsoft calls this special secret sauce about how we store the data in one lake. But essentially there is no secret. Everything is fairly simple. So Delta Parquet, let's break this down, its name into two separate parts. So we start with Parquet, which is the physical format for storing the data. So Parquet was introduced approximately 15 years ago, and it's an open source format. It's tool agnostic basically. It supports different programming languages, so you can retrieve the data from Parquet files using various programming languages, so you're not limited just to, let's say, Microsoft's implementation and stuff like that. It's also columnar storage, which is super important for analytical workloads.
So it's kind of like Power BI's columnar storage?
Kind of, but it also introduces some additional structures inside. It's not just a columnar storage, it also implements horizontal separation of data.
So
through
the
row
data
groups.
is also row groups?
Exactly. Through the row groups, we also have a horizontal separation of data, which in the end helps the engine to faster retrieve the data because it can keep scanning those partitions inside the file that are not needed by the query. So Parquet was there before Fabric. Parquet still exists outside of Fabric, but the secret ingredient that really makes Parquet de facto standard today for storing the data for analytical workloads is basically this Delta format on top of Parquet file. Okay. I like to call it Parquet format on steroids, and this means that with this Delta log we can basically track all the changes that are made to the data, so you can perform point-in-time analysis. Essentially you are getting features and capabilities of traditional data warehouses in terms of keeping data integrity, but this time storing data in file, which is open source format. That means that any engine which is capable of reading Parquet can read the data from that file.
Okay, so there's a couple of things to unpack over here. The first one, we talked about how Lakehouse brings out the best of data lakes and warehouses together. So you are saying that Delta Parquet brings out the best of what we used to get from transactional and analytical and brings them together.
Kind of, yeah, kind of. Not in terms of transactional workloads, that's another story, but it stores the information about transactions that happen to the data store.
That's what I meant by essentially like what the logs we used to get from a transaction perspective, it leaves the logs behind.
Exactly, because by their nature, Parquet files are immutable. So once you update the data or delete the records from your table, essentially there will be a new version of the file. And Delta log keeps track of all these changes of all these versions, different versions of Parquet files.
Okay, there's one more thing I want to kind of focus on. You mentioned this is open format. This is the secret sauce of success of OneLake and whatnot, but you're saying that this is tool agnostic. So even as Microsoft says, this is open by default, this is where it comes from, that when we store the data in a Delta Parquet format, unlike SQL Server, which is proprietary, only SQL Server can read it, in this scenario, many tools can read it.
Yeah, that's a big shift in terms how Microsoft treated data storage, beginning with Fabric. So before Fabric, all Microsoft data platform solutions had their own proprietary format. So that means once you store the data inside Microsoft Data Platform, you are locked in within Microsoft as a vendor. Now with Parquet, essentially any engine, including, for example, Databricks, can read the data outside of these Parquet files. That's why we say that OneLake is based on this open storage approach.
All right. I think that leads to the point of the idea of how many copies of your data. Stay tuned for the next one.